Welcome back. It's kind of rainy outside and I've got a ton of indoor projects to do. One of them is chitting potatoes. Chitting is the process of letting them sprout so that they get a little head start when you plant them. It also reduces the risk of the potato sitting in the ground and rotting or getting eaten by something. So you have to kind of do this a good number of weeks before you plant them. And this might be a little bit too early. But I have the time now, and I'm moving into a period where I'll have less and less time, so I'm going to get it done. But before I talk about the chitting, I'm going to talk about the storage. I mentioned this a little bit in that fabulous video I did on baking potatoes, which I'm sure all of you found informative. This is how I store the potatoes. I put them in brown paper bags. I store them dirty. Some of the very important things, though, when you harvest them, treat them gently. Do not do anything that can bruise them. If you have a bucket and you're putting them in a bucket, place them in the bucket carefully. Don't toss them. The potatoes will bruise if you don't handle them carefully. And those bruises are very often where rot starts. So all the potatoes that you store need to have unbroken skin and be handled carefully, not bruised. You let them dry out a bit, let the dirt on them dry out. Basically, if you pick them in the morning, leave them out during the day in the shade. Don't put them in the sun. And then I weigh them and sort them and put them in bags. So when I go down, because I grew 128 pounds potatoes last year, when you go down to pick them out of the storage, it's very easy to know that I have large russets here. 4 pounds is the amount that fits in a regular bag that you buy at the grocery store. I store these right now, I have them in a cardboard box, and that box is suspended from the joists. The reason why I did that is because when I put the box on a shelf, some furry little critters got in there and chewed up a bunch of potatoes. Which that is something to keep in mind. So, the other thing about chitting and planting, I'm using the potatoes I grew as seed potatoes. As you can see, maybe the eyes are just starting to poke out, which is a good sign. I am picking the nicest potatoes I have left in order to plant. So this stage of the chitting is very simple. I am just going to put these into some milk cartons just to hold them up, and they're in front of this window, which is the only south-facing window I have in the house. The light triggers the growing process as well as the temperature. You could see, I was concerned that the reds would not keep as well because they are a thinner skinned potato. But this potato I could not tell the difference between now and when I put it into storage. Maybe it's just a tad less firm, but this is superior to the quality that you would buy in a store, in my opinion. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. They are arranged in a way that somehow suits my sensibilities, and I'm just going to leave them here. The potatoes are chitting along nicely. Tell you the truth, I'm not sure if chitting refers to the sprouting or the cutting up or both together or what. But anyways, this is obviously more potatoes than in the previous segment. Well, I started with 4 pounds of red and 4 pounds of russets. And I added 1 pound. I wanted to have 5 of each. So I added a pound of reds, and they've almost caught up. This is one of the second batch, and that's the first batch. So they're pretty close in sproutitude. The reds obviously sprout a little more vigorously than the russets. When I added a russet, I decided to add this one. Basically, a potato is passing on all of its genetics to the next generation. There's no sexual reproduction going on. It's kind of like cloning. The plant this year is pretty much going to be identical to the plant that grew the potato. I'm hoping this plant has some magical genetics to it. I grew 3 potatoes like this. 3 or 4. I think it was 3. And one of them was huge. It was 1 pound, 12 ounces. This potato is about a pound on its own. So I definitely want to pass on these genetics. One of the odd things, the potatoes have an end that has a sprout at the very end, and it has an end with a little belly button where the tether, whatever the thing is called that comes out of the plant that fires up and inflates the potato, it's like a belly button. The umbilical, where the umbilical comes in. So down on the umbilical end, there's very few eyes that sprout, and the other end has more. So I'm not sure. I may end up eating part of this potato because there are very few. There's a couple sprouts. I don't know. We'll see. So to the 5 pounds of russets and 5 pounds of reds, I bought some seed potatoes yesterday. These are Yukon Gold. So that's going to be my new variety. We'll see how that does. As you can tell, they've already sprouted, but they've been sprouting in the dark. So the sprouts have no color to them. And there's also just a sprout on the sprouty end, not the belly button end. And I'm not sure why that is. In comparison, I like the potatoes I sprouted myself much better. The other thing I'll mention, I tried this last year and made the mistake of using the greenhouse, figuring there's lots of light out there. But it also gets over 100 degrees. Like today it was 120 degrees there. And then it gets very cold at night. I think the extremes in temperature caused the potatoes to rot. I lost quite a few potatoes. This year I am not losing anything so far. So anyways, what we're going to do here, I'm going to cut up these reds because the sprouts are looking like a nice size. And I'm going to cut them so I get the maximum number of plants out of these potatoes. You have to handle these very, very carefully because the sprouts are very fragile and they can break right off. All right. So what I'm going to be doing is cutting this and then setting it in an egg carton carefully so that it can dry out. The cut sections can dry out and heal. It takes a few days to a week. The reason why you do that is so that when you put the potato in the ground, it's less likely to rot. It will just begin growing. And as you can see, this is the sprouty end, and that's the belly button end. And there are more sprouts on this end. You want at least one good sprout on each piece. Having 2 or more is fine, but as long as you have one sprout, you'll get a plant. And the idea here is to maximize the number of plants. The first year, with no horse manure, so I had poor soil and a 5-pound bag of seed potatoes, I harvested 13 pounds. I did very little cutting, very little chitting. Last year, with probably about 12 pounds maybe 13. Hard to tell because I lost a bunch to rotting. I did cut them up. I used a lot of horse manure, and I got 128 pounds of potatoes. So this process was definitely part of why I got a lot of potatoes. So starting out, I've got 3 on this base, the non-end here, so I'm going to cut and try and cut and leave a good amount of potato in between each sprout, and then cut this kind of three ways. That. There's one. There's 2 and 3. Yeah. Gets a little harder on this end because the sprouts are so close together. Here's one. I think I may leave this whole cluster together. I could take, yeah. Yeah, I think I'll leave that as it is. Okay, so the first 2 potatoes, I got 11 pieces that should each make a plant. One, 2, 3, 4, 5 dozen. I got 5 dozen plus 1 plants, or potential plants, out of 5 pounds of red potatoes. I'm going to stop there because the russets, I think, could use a little more time, as well as the Yukon Golds. Basically just trying to feed the pipeline. Within a week or so, I want to have these in the ground, and now's the time to cut them up to chit them. So I think I'm going to end this video for here. That's what chitting's all about. Or actually, maybe I'll come back. No, I'm going to end it here. I'll show you what these are like in the planting potatoes video, which they should basically be dry, maybe a little shrivelly, and the sprouts should be bigger. So there you go. Until next time.